Experts from the solar industry who are going to be explaining what the current status of solar power is in New York City and where we hope it will go. And we're very glad that you're all here. There's a number of different environmental groups in New York City who are working together to expand renewable power in the city.
Tonight we have 7 sponsors. The New York Climate Action Group. JK, are you here? Can you stand up? The New York Climate Action Group has 2 divisions. One works on rainforest wood and the second works on barriers to renewable energy installations, particularly solar in the city. Neighborhood Energy Network, it's me and a lot of people in the room. Friends in Unity with Nature, do we have a friend? Tom? Okay, Tom Goodrich, please stand up so people can see you. So if you want to talk to people about their groups later, you can meet with them. WBAI's Ecologic, Ken Gale, who put this panel together tonight, is sick, so he couldn't come. His partner and spouse, Mercy Van Block, is at the front door. So if you have questions about WBAI's Ecologic with Ken Gale, you can talk to her. New York City Friends of Clearwater, Carl Talbot, could you please stand up? Thank you. And Oil Awareness Meetup, Gusty? Yeah, could you please stand up? And Sierra Club, New York City Group, Annie? Annie, are you here? Okay, and Dan. Also in the audience, I see many former presenters for co-sponsored events. Chris Benedict, leading green architect. Please stand up, Chris. Jamil Ahmad, who's working on the tidal project and the East River. Tom Weissmuller, please stand up, who did Colder Side of Global Warming. Anybody I haven't seen? Session as a result of Richards Klein's long-term working relationship with Ken Gale. And the New York Climate Action Group's Net Metering Barriers to Solar Power Subcommittee, combining forces to put this together. We're interested in follow-up action. This is Salvo 1. We're trying to educate ourselves with the experts so that we can then follow up with an action. And there will be a follow-up meeting to this on January 17th, next week, next Thursday, at the 6th Street Community Center, 638 East 6th Street, between Avenues B and C in Manhattan, where we will try to figure out where we can go with this information, what we can work on. Even on the ACES website, their roadmap for the future. Energy efficiency does most of the work. Solar is an incredibly important part of action.
We're one of the only companies in New York City that does solar thermal. I don't have to deal with a lot of people working for the government, which to me is a blessing. Here's an example of a system that we built a few years ago in the middle of Greenwich Village. It's the largest working solar hot water system, produces about 2,500 gallons of hot water a day for 50 units. It's right off of 6th Avenue. Here's an example of a very simple hot water system in Minnesota that does very well in the winter using vacuum tubes. We also did some of the first vacuum tube systems here in New York 2 years ago. Here's an example of a schematic of how a simple hot water system would work with collectors on the roof here. Oops, go back. This is adding a little bit more complexity. You can have a solar hot water and heating system. As I said, some of the disadvantages to thermal are, on the other hand, there are no government subsidies. Thermal systems are harder to put up than PV. Also, the panels are a lot heavier, a factor of about 3x. This is a graph of a book that I'm just reading now by Peter Tarzakian. What I found interesting is, if you look here, fuel oil is about 20%. 20% of the fuel is used for home heating, and I don't see why, if every home had, or even say 10% of the homes in the United States had solar hot water systems, that could be a fairly significant reduction. Even 2%, it doesn't sound like a lot. That's a big number. Some of the goals for solar thermal. The thermal market is not as developed as photovoltaics. We're probably about 5 years behind product development. Not a lot of money has gone into the solar thermal as the way it's going into PV right now. So there's lots of opportunities for investors and new patents and all these sorts of things. That's it. Thank you.
Now, a little bit more about Mr. Klein. Richard is CEO and founder of Quixotic Systems, Inc., which has built and designed some of the city's largest and most innovative renewable energy systems. He holds several U.S. patents in the domain of solar energy and was an early-stage investor in several of the world's leading solar companies. Q-Cells, a successful IPO from 2005, Solaria Corp., and Prism Solar, and you can visit him online at www.quixotic-systems.com. And here is Richard Klein.
First of all, a few terms. In the solar industry, we generally define the size of a system in terms of kilowatts. 1 kilowatt is 1,000 watts. That'll be a little helpful when I start talking. Again, I assume you all know who Kafka is. I'm going to tell you a little bit of a story about a system that I sold 2 years ago to Mr. K. Mr. K is not a character in a Kafka novel. I sold a 4 kilowatt system on a renovated home on the Upper West Side for about $8.50 a watt. That was $36,000. Part of that payment came from NYSERDA, which at the time was $4 a watt, which was $16,000, and the owner paid $20,000. Now, there were a lot of delays that were due to the homeowner who was renovating the house. I had to wait about a year after I sold the system. In that period of time, lots of things within the city changed, and I ended up losing money on the job, and the job is still not complete. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that and the frustration that all of us have working in New York City. First, let me preface that all of you know that the solar industry in most parts of the world has taken off in the sense of you reading every day about companies that are going public, new products in the market, large systems being done in California, in Europe, etc. All of those things are happening, but not really in New York City. So I'm going to try to explain from my perspective why that's the case. A lot of that has to do with the fact that, from my perspective, we're overregulated. So let's go back to Mr. K. So I was waiting a year. Within that time, the city decided that we were going to have to get what was called a UL inspection for every solar system. Now, all of the equipment that we use in the solar industry is UL certified. But the city was saying that we had to now have every system field inspected by Underwriters Laboratory. which was an additional cost. Generally, when we install systems, we have lots of different competing